Chisholm will now move to question time, and I'll call Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, President. President, my question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. In question time on the 15th of May this year, the Minister said, and I quote, that we will reach an inflation rate with a 2 in front of it through the year. Minister, do you still believe that you will reach an inflation rate with a 2 in front of it through this year?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, President. I thank Senator Birmingham for the question. And in that answer on the 15th of May, I was reflecting the Treasury forecasts which are contained in the budget. That is the advice to government on the that is the Treasury advice to government on their expectations around inflation, and so that my comments as I relayed them in 15th of May are accurate. And I would say that while the monthly CPI figures do move around from time to time and don't necessarily measure the same things, we do have inflation at about half of its peak and certainly significantly lower than what we inherited when we came to government, and that is a welcome outcome. We are pleased with that, but it is still too high and we want it to come down lower, which is why our calibrated and carefully thought through budget, which had those measures which put downward pressure on inflation whilst also supporting households, are an important part of our plan. The other part of our plan, obviously, and as I've talked about, is delivering a surplus, the second surplus, something that those opposite were unable to deliver. We've delivered one surplus. We're tracking for a second surplus. The savings that we have found, all of that was not delivered. In the last budget of the former government, I think it was $40 billion worth of spending and not a cent in savings at a point when inflation is higher than it is now. So we are making good progress. There is more work to be done. We recognise that people are under the pump, that households are under the pump, which is why our sensible cost of living relief, some of which comes in on the 1st of July, so how many days is that? 4 days away, will assist families with some of those pressures.
Senator Birmingham, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. Supplementary question. Minister, yesterday you stated that, and I quote, the RBA forecasts and the Treasury forecasts are very similar, end quote. And Treasury has forecast an inflation rate of 3.5% for the June quarter. The RBA forecast a different figure at 3.8% for the June quarter. And of course, inflation for the month of May is running at 4% above both those forecasts. Is inflation still on track to reach the RBA's target band by 2025 or not?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Gallagher.
The RBA are responsible for their inflation forecasts, and I would say that the inflation forecasts they released in May 24 were, I think from memory, a week before the budget was handed down. The Treasury forecasts had the benefit of the measures that had been agreed to by the government in terms of formulating the measure. And so, outside of that, the forecasts between the RBA and the Treasury, as I said, are quite similar. I think all of us should be working in this place to make sure that inflation comes back to band as soon as possible, because that impacts on households. And if those opposite, have not come up with one idea of something that they would not spend in this budget that would impact certainly in the next financial year, whilst they criticise it. So you can go out and criticise everything the government's doing, but you haven't come up with one suggestion or one plan about how that might be achieved.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Birmingham, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. Minister, this morning you said that there's no doubt that those 13 interest rate increases have really hit households. Minister, Australian markets are now pricing in a 78% chance of another 0.25% rate hike by November this year. How hard do you think a 14th rate rise will hit already struggling Australian households?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Gallagher.
Well, the comment that I made this morning was accurate. We see in the consumption data, we see it in retail trade, we see it in a range of the economic data sets, the impact that those interest rate increases are having on households. And I would say that inflation now is significantly less than it was when we came to government. And let's remember when the interest rate increases commenced. They commenced under you, Senator Birmingham. That is the economic impact. No, I am merely pointing out the facts. I'm merely pointing out the facts that when the RBA started their interest rate increases, it was happening in an environment where inflation was higher and you were in charge. We have managed to bring that inflation down. It hasn't come. We want it to come down further. But we have done the hard work through our fiscal policy and through our measures to make sure that is the case.
Senator Sheldon.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations, Senator Watt. I note that since taking office, the Albanese Labor government has been focused on getting wages moving and easing cost-of-living pressures after a decade-long race to the bottom on wages under the Liberals and Nationals. How does the Labor government's agenda make sure Australians are earning more and keeping more of what they earn?
Minister Watt.
Thanks, President. And that is a great question, Senator Sheldon. I think it'll be hard to top that question today. And I'm pleased to let Senator Sheldon know that under the Albanese Labor government, more people are earning more and keeping more of what they earn. Our workplace relations agenda is helping Australians with secure jobs, better pay and safer workplaces. Those people in the gallery want to hear about that, about them getting higher pay, more secure jobs, and even more. I'm pleased to tell the gallery, thank you for the applause, I'm pleased to tell the gallery that on the 1st of July, next Monday, Labor is delivering a tax cut for every taxpayer up there in the gallery, $300 in energy bill relief for every household up there in the gallery, a freeze on their PBS medicine costs, a pay rise for the 2.6 million people on awards, and $1,721 more a year for workers on the minimum wage. And every one of those measures was opposed by Peter Dutton and the opposition. And unlike the opposition, we believe that helping Australians get higher wages is a key part of providing cost-of-living relief. Now, we know that the previous coalition government kept wages low as a deliberate design feature of their economic architecture, but now we know in opposition the coalition have voted against every single one of our workplace relations measures. And of course, we recently learned that their shadow industrial relations spokesperson, Senator Cash, has given her support to the New South Wales Liberal Party's Work Choices style policy platform. In a leaked letter to the New South Wales Liberal Party, Senator Cash said their platform had, quote, several good ideas that align strongly with the coalition's approach to industrial relations. What are those good ideas, according to Senator Cash? They include making it easier to sack people, abolishing the Better Off Overall test, removing rights as a condition of employment and removing award protections for thousands of workers.
Your time for answering has expired. Just a moment, Senator Sheldon. And Minister Watt, I do remind you when you refer to members in the other place, please use their correct title. Senator Sheldon, first supplementary.
Well, given that Senator Michaela Cash and the Liberals have given their support to the New South Wales Liberal Party's risky industrial relations policy platform, can the minister outline how the Albanese Labor government's agenda is getting wages moving for the lowest paid workers to ease cost-of-living pressures?
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Minister Watt.
Delighted to, Senator Sheldon. And isn't it interesting that Senator Cash, who usually has a lot to say in question time, she's very busy over there talking about very important matters of opposition right now, when we bring out the fact that she's written to the New South Wales Liberal Party saying that, what was the quote? Several good ideas that align strongly with the coalition's approach to industrial relations. Oh, you are here, Senator Cash. And what we know about those policies that Senator Cash has endorsed is they would remove minimum pay and conditions for truckies, for nurses, for school teachers, for Australian federal police officers, for shop assistants, for early childhood educators and coal mine workers. Now, in contrast to that, on Monday, the 1st of July, 2.6 million workers in Australia will see their pay increase as a result of the Albanese government's action and the Fair Work Commission decision. Every taxpayer will receive a tax cut, not just some, and there'll be $300 off every power bill for every household. Under Labor, you'll earn more and keep more of what you earn. Under the Liberals, you'll work more for less.
Minister. The time has expired. Senator Sheldon, second supplementary.
I note that the Liberals and Nationals have committed to a targeted package of repeals to the government's workplace relations changes, endorsement of a risky industrial relations policy and an expensive energy policy that won't deliver much-needed cost-of-living relief for 2 decades. How are the Albanese government's reforms helping Australians earn more and keep more of what they earn while relieving cost-of-living pressures? And why are these reforms so important?
Minister Watt.
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. And as you very well know, the Albanese government's #1 focus is easing the cost-of-living pressures for all Australians. Combined with wage growth and our investment in reliable renewable energy, only the Albanese Labor government is delivering the cost-of-living relief that Australians need. Mr Dutton and the Coalition want Australians to pay more for their risky nuclear reactors and pay more for their power, but they can't even get their lines straight. Will there be a cap on renewables or not? Senator Birmingham, or Solar Simon as we like to call him, he doesn't think so. He doesn't think there'll be a cap on renewables.
But
Mr Littleproud—
Minister Watt, withdraw that.
Thank you. I didn't realise it was offensive to be called solar on the other side of the chamber, but apparently it is. But Mr Littleproud, the leader of the National Party, has a different view. He says there should be a cap on renewables. How much will it cost? Well, apparently Australians aren't entitled to know, but Mr Littleproud says he knows, and the member for O'Connor, Mr Rick Wilson, knows the Collie reactor will be $7 billion. The Liberals and the Nationals want people to pay more for their power. They oppose every cost-of-living measure we're delivering to Australians.
Has expired. Senator Cash.
Thank you very much. And my question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, after 3 Labor budgets, the cost of food is up 11.4%, housing 14%, rent is up 14.2%, electricity is up 21.5% and insurance is up 16.2%. Can Australians expect to see significant decreases in the cost of any of these essential items prior to Christmas?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, President. I thank Senator Cash for the question. Inflation remains a significant challenge across many economies across the world. Australia is no different. We are seeing welcome moderation in the inflation rate compared to when we came to government. Let's not forget, we inherited inflation at 6.1%. It peaked in December 22 at over 8%. I think it was 8.4%, and it has come down and is now moderating, and that is welcome. And I would have thought we would have all welcomed that. In terms of the 3 budgets, and in terms of the since we've come to power, we have record number of new jobs, President, since coming to office. That is a great thing. We have the lowest gender pay gap on record. We have record women's participation. We have wages moving again for the first time after a decade of stagnation and policy that kept wages low. We've seen increases in the minimum wage. Of course, we've delivered the first budget surplus in 15 years, with another one to come. I know that hurts those opposite. And in terms of cost of living help and support for families, we have tax cuts for every taxpayer on the 1st of July. We have cheaper childcare, cheaper medicines, Medicare urgent care clinics. We've tripled the bulk billing rate, the incentive. We've got fee-free TAFE places. We've got energy bill relief. We've strengthened PPL. We've extended PPL. We're going to pay super on PPL. All of these measures that those opposite in 10 years couldn't get around to.
McKenzie.
We've got increased support for job seeker and single parents. We have established the Housing Australia Future Fund, recognising the disarray the housing policy area was in. All of that we've achieved in just 3 budgets.
Senator Cash, first supplementary.
Thank you. And Minister, Deutsche Bank Chief Economist Phil O'Donoghue said yesterday that, and I quote, "Underlying inflation is intolerably high in Australia, In fact, Australia is the only G10 country where underlying inflation has increased since December. If the government's budget is working to put downward pressure on inflation, as you continue to claim, why is Australia the only G10 country that has seen a rise in inflation since December?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, as Senator Cash knows, or I hope she knows, that inflation peaked here lower and later than most G7 countries, and given it peaked here later in Australia, its moderation is slightly behind. Well, in fact, it peaked higher in most countries, Senator Birmingham. Across the OECD, inflation in Australia peaked later and lower than 21 out of 37 countries. Interest rates started rising here later than in the US, Canada and the UK, and despite that, our core inflation is lower than the UK and New Zealand. Inflation is moderating, President, but it will remain higher than we would like for longer than we would like, which is why we've taken the sensible decisions that we did in the budget, not only the tax cuts kicking in on the 1st of July, but energy bill relief, our cheaper medicines policies, our work that we're doing for students with the HELP and HECS debt relief. All of this is to support people at the—
Senator Cash, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. David Bassanese, Chief Economist at BetterShares, described the inflation figure as a shocker, adding that the result places enormous pressure on the Reserve Bank to raise interest rates in August. Meanwhile, Steve Mickenbecker of CanStar stated that the inflation rise was staggering, predicting the RBA would likely raise rates at its August meeting due to the high risk of entrenched inflation expectations. Minister, do you accept the likelihood of another interest rate hike has increased?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Gallagher.
Well, I don't speculate on interest rate increases or decisions made by the Independent Reserve Bank. And I do note that in this space there is a lot of opinions and a lot of commentary and a lot of people writing various commentary about what they expect to see. We do not engage in that. The bank is independent. It will make its own decisions. And we don't preempt any of that. But the broader point is that inflation has moderated. It is much lower than its peak. It's much lower than what we inherited when we came to government. And we will continue to use all the levers available to us to make sure that we are putting downward pressure on inflation through measures like energy bill relief, through measures like Commonwealth rent assistance, so housing and rents, where we're seeing those rates of inflation higher than we would like. Those measures are targeted at those, and at the same time we'll support households with cost of living pressure through our targeted assistance that we're providing through the budget.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Shoebridge.
Thanks, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Immigration, Minister Watt. In late March, your government tried to rush through the Trumpian and anti-refugee migration amendment removals and other measures bill 2024. It was still warm from the photocopier when your government was pushing to have it urgently voted through. 3 months on, and this stinker of a bill has been roundly rejected, but it remains festering away on the notice paper. Why did you mislead the public by saying it needed to be passed in less than 2 days with no parliamentary oversight?
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. And of course I reject the proposition that's being put forward by Senator Shoebridge. I remind Senator Shoebridge that not only did the government introduce this bill, but the Senate committee that inquired into the bill recommended that the parliament pass this bill. And we continue to call on the opposition to commit to supporting the legislation. I'm reminded that on the 28th of March this year, the Shadow Home Affairs Minister, Senator Patterson, said, and I quote, "We will bring our members and senators back whenever required to pass this legislation." But funnily enough, the bill has not been prepared to be debated by the opposition, including on many days when it has been listed. Senator Patterson, even on the 7th of May, Senator Patterson said, and I quote, "We do recognise there's a genuine public policy problem here, which is that some people who are found not to be refugees refused to cooperate with their own deportation and then can languish in Australia for many years after they should. That's a genuine problem." So, unfortunately, Senator Shoebridge, as you would be aware, it does require a majority of senators to vote for any bill, and unfortunately, we understand the Greens will never support this bill, but the opposition, despite their many claims, including those two from Senator Patterson, have made clear that they are unwilling to pass this bill as well, even on the many days when it has been listed for debate. So we do continue to call on the opposition to actually do what it says that it's about, which is strengthening our immigration laws. We remain of the view that those to whom Australia does not owe protection. Of course, there's a different situation for those who have been found to be needing asylum in Australia. But for those found not to be the effect, then we do think it is the Australian people's right to deport those people, and we think that those laws are required.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Senator Shoebridge, first supplementary.
Minister, with 103 public submissions from organisations and hundreds of personal submissions to the inquiry on this bill, only one, and that was from Home Affairs, supported it. Diaspora communities and human rights groups have called this bill racist, in breach of international law, a threat to social cohesion, cruel, ineffective and unworkable. Why did your government so fundamentally betray and ignore multicultural communities in Australia by pushing this bill in the first place?
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Watt.
Well, I've already outlined here in Senate estimates and in previous Senate question times the policy basis for this legislation, but I also reject the attempt by the Greens of late to try to characterise themselves as the guardians of the rights of multicultural communities in Australia. If any reasonable observer only needs to look at not only the history of this government but the history of every federal Labor government to see that the only improvements that have ever been made for the interests of multicultural communities in Australia have been under Labor governments, including under the Albanese Labor government, whether it be in every possible way about immigration itself, about rights for asylum seekers, about support for those who are in Australia, about support for social cohesion, something unfortunately that the Greens have yet to learn. We know the Greens aren't interested in social cohesion. They're actually about inflaming division within the community, particularly multicultural communities. Labor stands by its record supporting multicultural communities.
Senator Shoebridge, second supplementary.
So with no one supporting the bill outside of your government, with your government being too embarrassed to bring it forward, why won't you show some decency and just withdraw it from the notice paper and get back a tiny, tiny bit of your reputation with multicultural Australia?
Thank you, Senator Shoebridge. Minister Watt.
Thank you, Senator President. And Senator Shoebridge, I am well aware that the Greens in the last little while have tried to set themselves up as the guardians of multicultural Australia, having previously shown no interest in those issues whatsoever in the entire lifetime of their party. And as I say, what this government is about is genuine support for multicultural communities, not actually dividing Australian communities, in particular multicultural communities, in the way the Greens have been doing of late. This is an important time in Australia's history. We know that there are many international conflicts where there is great division within our Australian community, and what all responsible politicians in this chamber should be doing is actually working to bring communities together rather than dividing them in the way the Greens try to do, in the way Mr Dutton and the Coalition try to do, and in the way One Nation try to do. We are going to do better for multicultural communities than that. We're going to try and bring people together, and we're going to continue supporting multicultural communities for the benefit of all Australians and our whole country.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Senator Sterle.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, how will the Albanese Labor government's tax cuts in 4 days' time provide impactful cost of living relief and benefit for all Australians and all taxpayers, not just some? Can the Minister please also outline some of the other ways the budget supports all Australians with the challenges of cost of living? Thanks, Senator Sterle. Minister Wong.
Thank you to my friend Senator Sterle for that excellent question. Just as he knows, and as all of the senators on this side know, in just 4 days every Australian taxpayer gets a tax cut. In 4 days every Australian taxpayer gets a tax cut. And in 4 days our $300 energy bill relief for every household also begins. And also in 4 days, 2.6 million low-paid workers get their third consecutive pay rise backed by this government. backed by this government. And in 4 days, paid parental leave increases to 22 weeks. And what I would say to those opposite who come in here almost barracking for an interest rate rise, the only people in Australia who want an interest rate rise are those opposite because they think it's in their political interest. We on this side understand that Australians are under pressure. We on this side understand how important it is to deliver cost of living pressures, cost of living measures to ease cost of living pressures, as well as tax cuts for every Australian taxpayer. We are delivering in total some $7.8 billion in cost of living relief in the budget. As I said, from Monday, 13.6 million Australian taxpayers get a tax cut. Everyone who pays tax, not just some, and the average family will save more than $3,200. Sadly, what is Mr Dutton's plan? Mr Dutton's plan is no. No to getting wages moving, no to cheaper medicines, no to power bill relief, no to cheaper childcare, and remember how much they hated having to vote for the tax cuts and how much they're still now saying they were the wrong thing to do. I mean, we really know what the coalition is about, don't
Thank
we?
you, Minister.
No to wage increases,
Your time
no
for
to tax
answering
cuts.
has expired. Senator Sterle, first supplementary.
Yeah, thank you, President. But thank you, Minister. As a proud member of a Labor government that delivers support for Australians when they need it most, can the minister please tell the Senate why Labor's tax cuts are fairer, better and will support more Australians in more industries, including those who are low and middle-income earners? Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Senator Sterle. Minister Wong.
Thank you to Senator Sterle, and I acknowledge your and so many of our colleagues' advocacy for so many years for low and middle income Australians. And that is one of the big differences between our parties. Those opposite, remember, had a tax increase, had tax cuts which vastly benefited those on higher incomes. Remember, and now they're still yelling about it. I know it really pains you that 2.9 million people on incomes under $45,000 a year who would not have received a cent under your plan now get a tax cut under us. That really pains you, doesn't it? And I look forward to Senator Birmingham being very supportive of the fact that 9 out of 10 of our taxpaying constituents in South Australia will get a bigger tax cut. I look forward to Senator Hume being pleased that 86% of Victorian taxpayers will get a bigger tax cut from the 1st of July. And I look forward to Senator Cash recognising that 81% of Western Australians will get a bigger tax cut.
Senator Sterle, second supplementary.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much, President, and thank you, Minister. I find it concerning that that mob over there, the Liberals and the Nationals, have voted against cost of living relief and don't have a plan to provide reliable, clean and cheap power for this decade. Minister, how is the government supporting Australians with energy bill relief now and planning for the future?
Thank you, Senator Sterle. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. And as Senator Sterle knows, we are ensuring $300 of relief on power bills from the 1st of July, on top of the relief we have previously provided. And we know that those opposite, in 4 days, that's right, in 4 days, $300 off your power bills. And we know the attitude of those opposite because they have been so opposed to assistance to Australian households. But instead, what have they done? So Labor's taken $300 off your power bills. In 2 decades, Peter Dutton will serve up the most expensive form of energy there is, and he will ask taxpayers to pay for it. That's their plan. But I tell you what, colleagues, have you noticed something? Have you noticed how they dropped off prosecuting this great political strategy? Have you noticed how nuclear is now in this chamber? This nuclear is now in this chamber the policy that dare not speak its name. You know it's a done. You know it's a done. You can't even bring yourselves to defend it.
Minister Wong, the time has expired. Senator David Pocock.
President, my question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change, Minister Wong. Minister, does the government owe children a duty of care to protect them against the harms brought about by climate change?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President, and I acknowledge that Senator Pocock has made a contribution previously and regularly about this issue, and I would say to him, as I said when I was Climate Minister many years ago, I think there is the idea that of intergenerational equity does matter, that we do have a responsibility in this place and as political leaders to think about not just the equity for those who elect us now, but also those to come. And that is one of the imperatives around acting on climate change. And that is why, amongst many reasons, this government has been very clear about the level of ambition in our targets and the importance of acting on climate. We know it is a big task to reach the targets that we have articulated. It would have been far better if Australia had not had a decade where we didn't do this work. But we do recognise the economic and generational imperative of ensuring we do transition the Australian economy in the ways that we have outlined. So whether one talks about it in the context of duty of care or whether you talk about it in the context of our responsibility to generations to come, whatever the words you use, I do think those who appreciate what climate change means for our people need to also think about what it means for those yet to come. And that's why we need to ensure we transition the economy, and there is only one party of government that will do that work, and that is the Australian Labor Party. We are the only party of government who is prepared to do that. And we see that again, if I may say, Senator Pocock, where we, disappointingly, after years of the climate wars, where we thought finally that those, some policy sense would be seen in the coalition, we see what's happened on the...
Senator Pocock, first supplementary.
Minister, a legislation inquiry into my duty of care bill received 403 submissions from young people, academics, lawyers and even unions supporting the bill. The only submission that opposed a legislated duty of care to protect children was from the Institute of Public Affairs. Why is the government siding with the IPA on climate change policy?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Wong.
Senator Pocock, you're generally a very considered contributor to political debate in this place, but that was not a considered contribution. I mean, to suggest that this government, no, I think it's reasonable to suggest that this government on climate policy is doing what the IPA wants in circumstances where what conservative think tanks and conservative. How can that not?
Senator Pocock, are you on a point of order?
Just relevance. My question is about a legislated duty of care, not about broader climate policy.
Thank you, Senator Pocock. You referenced your bill and the submissions received for and against, and I believe the minister's being relevant. Minister Wong.
With respect, Senator Pocock, you're the one that made the suggestions about the IPA. I think I'm entitled to respond on behalf of the Labor government. And what I'd say to you is, we understand how important action on climate change is. We fought to ensure a cap on emissions in government. It was obviously highly contested. You may remember the sort of scare campaign that was run by those opposite, including $100 roasts. Notwithstanding that, we have always held to our position on climate, and we've gone to numerous elections and we have fought the argument.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pocock, second supplementary.
President, and thank you, Minister. Minister, will the government go to the next election telling young people that they don't deserve a legislated duty of care from the people who are sent to this place? From what I can see, our job should be to look after our young people and future generations.
Minister Wong.
We will go to the next election saying to young Australians that they deserve a government who delivers on action on climate change, who delivers a reduction in emissions and who delivers the transition in the Australian economy, and the only party of government that will ever deliver that is the Australian Labor Party. And that change will not come from motions on the floor of the Senate, from slogans, or from political stunts, or from interjections from the Greens political party. It will come from the hard policy work, the hard economic work that we know is required to change this economy from a fossil fuel dependent economy to one that is a clean energy economy, and to ensure Australia's a renewable energy power. Change comes from government. The problem in this country is that change has not been delivered until the election of this government, and we are delivering it.
Thank you, Minister. So, Senator Mackenzie.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, how much has been added to monthly repayments on the average $750,000 mortgage since Labor was elected in May 2022?
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. I'm sorry, just from Minister Wong. Thank you.
Thank you, President. Well, Senator, I don't have the figures on that in front of me, but we know we have been experiencing a period of higher inflation, higher than we would want. Certainly, when we came to government, we know what the inflation figures were, and the Independent Reserve Bank has made its decision when it comes to interest rates. What I would say to the senator is that obviously the way in which we seek to deal with this, as Senator Gallagher and the Treasurer have outlined and have made clear in their budget, is to balance those competing economic considerations, that is, to ensure we do respond to the challenges that Australians are experiencing in terms of cost of living, and to deliver responsible cost of living relief, but doing it in the way that manages inflation. And if you look at the recent inflation figures and what inflation would have been, but for some of the measures of this government, including in relation to energy and rent, you can see that is what we are doing. We obviously understand Australians are doing it tough there. We understand that the inflationary environment and interest rate changes have made life much more difficult for many people, and that is why we are doing what we can to deliver cost of living relief for Australians, as well as delivering budget surpluses rather than just talking about them. Now we're putting it on cups. Mugs. But what I would also say this, Senator, we on this side have been clear about how we approach this. Those opposite have opposed cost of living relief time and again, and continue to do so.
Thank you, Minister Wong. Senator Mackenzie, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you for not answering. Hopefully, this one you can assist us with, Minister. By how much has real disposable income fallen on a per capita basis since you were elected 2 years ago?
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Minister Wong.
Well, I can tell the senator that we have seen pleasingly in the March quarter real wage growth, and what I would say to the senator is, we understand that increases in average wages and minimum wages has been something that those opposite have not supported, but we have gone.
Minister Wong. Senator Mackenzie.
Point of order on relevance, Madam President. I was very clear, and it was a very short sentence. It was about real household disposable income and the fall over the 2 years. Given, obviously, what the minister is saying is one piece of that data. The other piece of the data is how much of that's been eaten up by inflation.
I believe the minister is being relevant, Senator Mackenzie, but I will continue to listen.
We have, I think we've been clear about the challenge inflation poses for our economy and for consumers. Senator Mackenzie, I think we have been very clear about the challenge inflation poses to consumers and to the economy, and that is why we are working to respond to it in the most responsible way that we can. we don't have the same view that your party does, that the way to respond to a high inflationary environment is to push back on wage increases.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator McKenzie, second supplementary.
Minister, by how much would a 14th interest rate hike increase the monthly repayments on the average $750,000 mortgage?
Minister Wong.
Thank you. I think that's the same as a question that was answered earlier by Senator Gallagher, and as she pointed out, we don't speculate on interest rate increases and or interest rate movements. Decisions on that are made by the Independent Reserve Bank. But I do think it's interesting, isn't it, colleagues? It's interesting, isn't it, colleagues, how much those opposite are barracking for an interest rate increase. You know, if you ever want to see an example of the way in which the coalition are always happy to look at their own political interests, this is it.
Minister Wong. Senator McKenzie.
Point of order relevance. This was if the minister knew, or if she doesn't know, let us just sit down. So you don't know and you haven't got the answer. The increase on monthly repayments.
Order.
The increase on monthly repayments.
Order. Senator McKenzie, you're debating. The minister is being relevant. Please continue, Minister Wong. Please continue.
Well, again, as I said, we don't speculate on decisions of the Independent Reserve Bank, but what I can comment on is the barracking by Senator McKenzie and those opposite, who were always happy to try and see Australians lose if they think they will win, if they think you will win. The only people in this country barracking for an interest rate increase are Senator McKenzie and her colleagues. They are the only people in this country who are seeking to barrack for an interest rate increase, and shame on
Thank you, Minister. Senator Patterson.
Madam President, my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Does the Prime Minister's personal welcome home for Mr Julian Assange, convicted of espionage by our closest intelligence partner, indicate that the Albanese government would tolerate a similar leaking of sensitive classified information in Australia?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Wong.
Thank you, Senator Patterson, and I'm very happy to respond to that. And in fact, I was asked a similar question this morning, and I made this point. We have laws in Australia in relation to national security information. We expect those laws to be observed by all citizens and by all entities. That is our position. In relation to Mr Assange, we have taken the view that this matter had gone on for too long, and as the Prime Minister has said, nothing further would be served, or nothing would be served by further incarceration of Mr Assange. I appreciate that there are a range of views in the Australian community about his actions, and some are very deeply felt. As Foreign Minister, what I can say, we viewed it as our obligation to advocate on behalf of an Australian citizen. As you would know, the decision his passage home was enabled by the plea arrangements and decision of an American court, which made its decision this week. That provided the pathway for his return home. As I said to you, whatever people's views about these matters, the Australian government has taken a view for some time, for a very long time, that this matter had gone on too long, and that is why the Prime Minister made this a priority and why this was raised at all appropriate levels of the government, including by me.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Patterson, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Do you agree with the Prime Minister when he compared Mr Assange's plight to that of Sean Turnell and Kylie Moore-Gilbert, people who were arbitrarily detained in dictatorships?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Wong.
I think if you are referring to the Prime Minister's statement, I observed that, and what he was talking about was a calm, considered disciplined approach to diplomacy, which we have deployed in relation to all of those cases. What I would say about Mr Assange is he went through an American legal process. You've heard me in this chamber, Senator, in response to other senators, including Senator Shoebridge, say that these are matters for either the United Kingdom or the US courts, and that in a comparable case, the matter could not be resolved until legal processes have been resolved. That is what occurred when the Department of Justice and Mr Assange appeared before the court in Saipan, and a judgment was entered. I would say to you, Senator, that it is appropriate.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Patterson, second supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Did Mr Albanese use his welcome home call to Mr Assange to seek assurances from him that in future he would not promote misinformation or release any further sensitive or classified information?
Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, as I said, I suspect the welcome home call was to express a hope that Mr Assange could spend time with his family. Obviously, this has been a very long process for him, and he has been away from his family for a very long time. What I would also say is that I'm sure that the Prime Minister's expectation is, as I have articulated, that national security information is to be protected. What I can also assure you is that the Prime Minister did not invite him to join the Labor Party in the way that Senator Canavan did when he said, "Well, mate, I'm happy for him, Mr Assange, to join the National Party."
Senator Polley.
President, my question.
Order.
President, my question is to the Minister.
Just a moment, Senator Polley. Order. Senators on my left. Order. I had called Senator Polley. Senator Canavan. Order. Order. Senator Canavan, I've called you twice. Order. Order on my left. I had invited Senator Polley to ask her question. Senator Polley.
President, my question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Industry and Science, Senator Farrell, and I refer to the Albanese Labor government's recent announcement about our plan to rebuild Australia's manufacturing capabilities to prepare for opportunities of the future and ensure a future made in Australia. How is the Albanese Labor government already working to deliver a future made in Australia and create more well-paid jobs, secure jobs across our country?
Thank you, Senator Polley. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. And can I thank Senator Polley for her question? I know she's got a great interest in manufacturing. In fact, not only is it a future made in Australia, but of course this policy is a future made in Tasmania. So the Albanese government's future made in Australia plan is another part of this government's agenda to rebuild Australian manufacturing after a decade of neglect from the Liberals and the Nationals. We've established the National Reconstruction Fund and the Industry Growth Program and are developing the Battery Breakthrough and Future Made in Australia Innovation Fund. We've also announced production tax incentives for critical minerals processing, and we're consulting with industry experts, workers and communities about how to develop a green metals industry here in Australia. This is a government that will leave no stone unturned in supporting our Australian manufacturers to create secure, well-paid jobs across the country and in Tasmania. We're establishing the framework that will help industry to grow, to respond to the market and to meet the future needs of Australia and our trade partners, our many trade partners. A future made in Australia is about making things here and shipping them everywhere. It's about forming partnerships with the private sector, attracting investment and rewarding success. Being a country that makes things matters. It adds value to our natural resources, it makes our lives easier, and it ensures that we have access to the things that we need and when we need them. But perhaps most importantly, it delivers secure, well-paid jobs that are the lifeblood of many regional
thank you,
communities.
Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Polley, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for outlining everything that the Albanese Labor government is doing to strengthen the nation's manufacturing capability and in delivering new, secure, well-paid jobs across the country, including in regional Australia. How will the Future Made in Australia plan ensure that all Australians share in the benefits that will flow from a thriving, global, competitive manufacturing sector? Because we want to know about that on this side, even though those opposite don't.
Thank you, Senator Polley. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. And can I thank Senator Polley for her very fine first supplementary question. One of the key announcements on budget night was that our Future Made in Australia agenda will be guided by the community benefits principles. Those principles are how this government will ensure that workers, businesses and communities share in the prosperity created by our investment in Australian manufacturing. We want to ensure that we create safe and secure jobs with good pay and conditions, that we build a skilled and inclusive workforce by investing in training, that we engage with communities affected by the shift to net zero and First Nations communities to achieve positive outcomes, and finally, that we strengthen our domestic industry capability to bring these changes about.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Polley, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for outlining how all Australians will share in the prosperity created by our investment in Australian manufacturing. This is at odds with the Liberals and Nationals who oversaw a decade of inaction towards Australian manufacturing. How is the Albanese Labor government putting workers first in our policies surrounding domestic manufacturing and the great benefits it will bring not only to Tasmania but the country?
Thank you, Senator Polley. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. And again, I thank Senator Polley for her very fine second supplementary question. One of the key differences in the approach taken by this government compared to the previous government was that we are taking a calm, methodical, rigorous approach to supporting Australian industry. On their watch, the total number of manufacturing workforce jobs in Australia shrank by 100,000. Many of those were skilled workers in the car industry in South Australia, which the Liberals and the Nationals ran out of town. Let's not forget that the Liberals and the Nationals voted against this government's energy price relief, which helped keep manufacturers in business. Repairing that sort of damage, unfortunately, won't happen overnight, but under this Labor government it will happen.
Thank you. Senator McGrath.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, recently a US congressman from the US House Energy and Commerce Committee called on the government to rethink its opposition to nuclear energy, with Congressman Neil Dunn saying, "Why isn't Australia with us on this? There are lots of commercial opportunities, you've got the uranium ore, you've got the skills, all you lack is the will." Meanwhile, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom said in March that nuclear delivers cheaper, cleaner, homegrown energy for consumers. How do you explain the government's ideological opposition to this technology when Australia's allies are working to implement all options in the path to net zero?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. I'm waiting for order on my right. Order. Senator McGrath, you've asked your question. Minister Wong.
So funny, so funny. So after they've had most of the week where they haven't dared to defend their nuclear policy, we now have the last question. From Senator McGrath. Senator McGrath about why we're not going down the nuclear path. Well, put very simply, Senator McGrath, we don't think $600 billion plus paid by taxpayers for the most expensive power you can buy, delivered in 20 years with no plan to do anything about supply since, is a good deal. Is a good deal. Funny about that, isn't it? We don't think that kind of political strategy, that the wheels are already falling off, is a good deal for Australians. That's why we are not going down the nuclear path. And it is quite extraordinary, isn't it, colleagues, the extent to which Mr Dutton's anti-renewables obsession can lead them up into this cul-de-sac. They can lead them up into this dead end of a policy that they know is a joke. They know it's a joke. And that's why the best they can do when they're asked how much it will cost is they say, "Oh, it's a big bill.
Senator
it's
McGrath,
a big
you've
bill.
asked the question.
It's a big bill. That's it. That's it." I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it? Here we have needing to transition the Australian economy, 24 out of 28 coal-fired power stations announcing their closure on the U, and the most you can do is come up with a policy that's going to deliver a big bill and 2 decades of supply diminishing and deliver the most expensive power there is. I mean, you couldn't make this
thank
stuff
you,
up,
Minister
could
Wong.
you?
The time for answering has expired. Order. Order on my right. Order. Order. Thank you. Senators on my right. Senator McGrath, first supplementary.
Fat shame me. Minister, Chris Bowen was recently corrected by a Canadian official for falsely claiming that energy bills in Ontario were cheap due to provincial government subsidies. Why does this government continue to misrepresent the ways in which other countries are using nuclear power to lower energy bills and decarbonise?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. I'm waiting for order before I call the minister. Order. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. And what I'd say again is, if you really want to understand what's going on with this nuclear announcement, really you only have to look at the last decade and a half of the division in the coalition when it comes to energy policy, when they had in excess of 20 policies, while coal-fired power station after coal-fired power station.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator McGrath.
A point of order on relevance. My question went to Chris Bowen and Canada. It did not reference anything to do with the coalition. So while the minister flicks through the answers, if you could ask the minister to wander back towards the question, that would be great, please.
Thank you, Senator McGrath. I do think the minister was being relevant, but I will continue to listen carefully, and if need be, I'll draw her back to the question. Minister Wong.
If you really want to understand why the coalition have gone for this political strategy, it's the decade and a half in excess of 20 policies because they couldn't bring themselves to support renewables. They couldn't bring themselves to support renewables. And it's all about the internals of their party room. Now, what I would also make the point about is that this has also been a change of position for Mr Dutton, because he's worked out that nuclear is the only thing that holds his party room together.
Sorry, Senator McGrath. I would have drawn the minister back to the question, but the time has expired. I'll invite you to ask your second supplementary.
Thank you. The UK Labor Party's 2024 election manifesto states, "We will ensure the long-term security of the nuclear sector, extending the lifetime of existing plants. New nuclear power stations will play an important role in helping the UK achieve energy security and clean power while securing thousands of good, skilled jobs." What does the UK Labor Party not understand about nuclear power that the Australian Labor Party does?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Minister Wong.
I hate,
Order.
We have, we obviously have a very deep and important relationship with the United Kingdom, but I think even they would recognise that we might get a bit more sun here. I reckon even they might recognise we might have a bit more land here. I think even they would recognise that we might have the ability to look to renewables that is more challenging for them. But I want to say this to those opposite. If this is so great, why have we seen so many state Liberals refuse to back you in? Why have we seen Mr Speakman? I actually didn't know who he was. I now know who he is. Mr Speakman saying, we can't wait for nuclear. I know it's hard, Simon. I know.
Senator Birmingham. Order. Order. Senator Birmingham. Order. Senator Birmingham. Order. There's 13 seconds remaining. You're on your feet.
With a point of order on relevance, President. And the point of order on relevance is, why is it that Senator Wong doesn't want to talk about the UK Labor Party and their strong, clear endorsement in relation to nuclear energy?
That is a debating point. Senator, what?
On the point of order, it's highly relevant for Senator Wong to be addressing the question asked by the opposition and providing the further detail that they were seeking. It is highly relevant to do so, so I ask you to rule against the point of order.
Thank you, Senator Wong. There was so much noise in the chamber. Senator Birmingham. Order. Order. I did dismiss the point raised by Senator Birmingham because it is a debating point. Minister Wong.
Well, I'm very happy. I wasn't trying to be gratuitous. I actually did genuinely not know who the person was. He said we can't wait for nuclear. John Pasuto has made clear I'm not racing down the nuclear path.
Thank you, Minister.
Peter Walsh has made the same question, and I asked a further question.